Hi, and welcome to the World Tree webinar. My name is Kathy Key, and I'm going to be sharing with you the World Tree Carbon Offset Program and how you can invest and reverse climate change. So before we get into our webinar, a word from our lawyers to remind you that this presentation does include what they call forward-looking statements. That's statements about what might happen in the future. Of course, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what will happen in the future. So please bear that in mind as you listen to the presentation. So I'd like to start by sharing with you a little about myself. So I'm the Chief Operations Officer with World Tree, and I actually live in Canada, British Columbia, but you might notice I have a little wee bit of an accent. I'm English, and when I lived in the UK, I was actually a professor of anthropology. And one of my mentors was an economist, and I did my research on models of cooperation. And I was interested in how, in a world where we're often competing for our slice of the pie, how could we instead bake ourselves a bigger pie? So I got really interested in cooperative business models. And then I ended up moving to Canada in 2001, and I did what all the smart young things were doing in 2001, which was started a software company. And we've been doing that for about 10 years when a life-changing event happened, which is that my husband was diagnosed with stage 3 prostate cancer. And for any of you that have had that kind of thing happen for yourself, you know it's a time where you reassess and reevaluate everything. And we decided at that time that we wanted to make our lives really mean something. And that wasn't happening for us in the world of software. So we sold our software company and we started to look for a way that we could contribute, particularly to the environment. And two things happened. One is that my husband recovered from his cancer. He's been cancer-free for 5 years, which is fabulous. And the second thing that happened was we met this wonderful company called World Tree, and we fell in love with the Empress Tree. And so that's what I'm going to get to share with you inside of this presentation. So that's a little about me. Now, what about you? If you're in this webinar, you're probably here, you're someone in one of three places. You're either someone who cares about climate change and making a difference in the environment. Or you might be somebody who identifies yourself as someone who is or wants to be an impact investor. In other words, someone who uses their money to things that are important to them. Or it might be you've heard about the tree or timber investing and you want to know more about that. If you don't hit any of those 3 points, you're probably not in the right webinar. If you get interested in knowing more about what we're doing on the investment side, we do have details on our WeFunder page, and I'll be sharing more details on that later on in the presentation. Okay, so let's talk about investing. Now, where you invest matters. When we invest our money in a company or an organization, we are literally voting for that company or organization to be successful. And historically in North America, we've tended to put our money into economies that have been environmentally destructive, particularly in the world of fossil fuels. And personally, I'm not somebody who likes to say that's bad or wrong because, frankly, you know, even just this webinar, the computer I'm speaking on has been made possible by those fossil fuels and what's happened in the past. However, here we are now when we're dealing with the impacts of having based our lives on these fossil fuels. And this graph is taken from the NASA Global Climate Change website. It's one of the most up-to-date sources of climate information. They tell you exactly what's going on right now. And this graph shows levels of carbon dioxide over the last 400,000 years. And as you can see, there's been this cyclical change in atmospheric carbon dioxide over time. And then in 1950, something very significant happened. Instead of like cycling, the levels of carbon dioxide started to escalate dramatically to the point where we are now. And the latest data is we're well over 400 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere. And just to put that in some kind of context, this is the highest level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that we've seen in 20 million years. And so really human beings have had a lot of say in how this has gone. And the impact is right now, latest data from the NASA website, we're already at 1.8 degrees of temperature rising, and that's only going to get worse. In October of 2018, the United Nations released a report saying that unless we do something dramatic, we are facing global catastrophe within the next 12 years. And that ranges from forest fires, floodings, droughts, and this will have huge impacts both on our human life, our animal life, our environment, and our economy. So that's the bad news. There is good news. So this man, if you've never heard of him before, look him up. He's called Paul Hawken. He worked with a group of scientists to look at, well, what can we do in the face of rising levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere? And given that we're already on a trajectory where things can only get worse, what can we do to make a difference? And the biggest thing that they found that will make a difference is actually to start removing carbon from the atmosphere. And they researched and documented the top 100 ways to do that would not only help the environment, but were also economically going to make a huge difference. Agroforestry, or trees, plants, all green things, were one of the solutions. In fact, it was the top number 15 solutions out of 100. So trees, like all green things, they take in carbon dioxide and they produce the oxygen that gives us the air to breathe. In other words, Mother Nature has already given us a solution to the problems that we're facing. So, isn't it kind of a no-brainer if we can both help the environment, clean up the air, clean up the mess we've made, and make money at the same time? So that's the philosophy at World Tree, and that's what we're out to do inside of our carbon offset program. So our solution is this. It's called the Empress Splendor tree. She is a beautiful tree, and the more you get to know her, the more you will fall in love with her. So that picture in the middle there, that's our CEO and founder, Wendy Burton, and she's holding the leaf of a 6-month-old tree, and that tree was in Tennessee. This is the fastest growing tree in the world. And in fact, the tree will grow from a small plant to maturity in under 10 years. So our basic business model at World Tree is very, very simple. We take this $3 plant, and over the course of 10 years, we turn it into $800 or more of lumber. Now, what causes that massive growth is photosynthesis. And the Empress tree is the only tree in the world that uses a method of photosynthesis called C4. It's a kind of method used by maize or corn. It's the most efficient way known to Mother Nature to use carbon to grow. It's so powerful that 1 acre of trees will absorb 1,000 tons of carbon over a 10-year cycle. Other remarkable properties of the tree are that it regenerates after harvest, so you don't have to replant. So this allows us to grow trees for timber as a crop. And by growing it as a crop, it means we don't have to destroy our beautiful natural forests. The other thing you want to note on this picture is the trees have beautiful blossoms in the spring, and the honeybees love the blossoms of the tree. The tree is known and loved by the permaculture community because it's great for intercropping. It provides shade to other plants, and the nitrogen fixing leaves, when they fall to the ground, they bring a natural fertilizer to the soil. So they actually are used to regenerate the soil. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. You can look this tree up in the Guinness Book of World Records. It's officially amazing. The fastest growing tree in the world, grows to maturity in 10 years, produces a beautiful hardwood, and it's not genetically modified. So this is a Mother Nature created tree, and it's non-invasive. We were published in the Farmer's Almanac last year. They described the Empress tree as possibly the world's most amazing tree. So at World Tree, we work with farmers in North and Central America, and we've already planted over 1,000 acres of these beautiful trees in a variety of locations that I'll share with you as we go through the presentation. And how we've done that is we've created a partnership between World Tree, our farmers, and investors. So World Tree, we have the expertise, we have particular genotypes of the tree that we know are great for timber production. And so we provide the expertise in the trees to our farmers, like Farmer Mario here, who's standing with a newly planted tree. And the farmers, we give them the trees for free, but the farmers provide the land and the maintenance and the TLC to bring those trees to maturity. And this whole thing is fueled by our investors who provide the financing for the entire program. The trees grow to maturity within 10 years, at which point we can harvest them for their lumber. And the lumber is beautiful. It's a strong, lightweight hardwood that's very water resistant and can be used for furniture, finishes, veneers, crown moldings, musical instruments, surfboards, paddleboards, and sailboats. In the current market, the wood sells for between $3 and $14 a board foot, depending on the quality of the wood. So, you know, if you're not familiar with the tree, you're probably wondering what that means. Well, it means that 1 acre of trees, well managed, can produce $90,000 or more per acre. Now, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, we can't predict the future. We don't know exactly what that can look like, but our philosophy at World Tree is to share the benefits. And we share the benefits of the harvest with our farmers and with our investors. And if you want to know more about that and how that looks, you can take a look at our WeFunder page, which actually breaks it all down for you. The United Nations is telling us that the demand for wood is going to double by 2050, at least double. And meanwhile, we're seeing a trend towards timber shortages. And this trend towards timber shortages is one of the reasons we're seeing so much deforestation. So if you're following along, you're kind of wondering, okay, so demand is high and it's getting higher, and supply is low. So you won't be surprised to learn that timber prices historically have been strong. In fact, timber has outperformed the stock market for the last 100 years, and it's increased in value at a rate 3% higher than inflation for the last 90 years. This graph produced by GWD Forestry, it shows you the growth of assets in timber compared to some of the more conventional investments we're all familiar with, like stocks and bonds, emerging markets, real estate. The timber is the green line. And as you can see, the green line is higher than the other lines for almost the whole of the last 20 years. And you can also see, kind of interesting, if you look at 2008 on the graph, you'll notice that most of the other lines have a dip, whereas the green line doesn't. And that's because many timber investments, like the ones we do at World Tree, are privately owned assets and are not tied in the same way to the stock market. In fact, basically for a tree, as long as it's raining and the sun shines and it's getting that love from Mother Nature that it needs, it's going to keep on growing. Now, of course, it is Mother Nature. This is trees grown as a crop. So there is going to be certain risks involved. And, you know, there's risks like, you know, what if a plantation gets wiped out through a weather event or some kind of pest event, or a farmer just isn't able to take care of the trees for some reason. So our basic approach at World Tree is we don't put all our eggs in one basket. We actually spread our trees across many farmers in many locations. So our plantation locations include much of the southern United States, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, all across the southern US. Also some spot locations up in the Northwest and right on the West Coast of Canada. Costa Rica, and then going in this year, we're actually going to be doing our first plantations also in Guatemala. And it's really fabulous to be able to provide these additional economic support to farmers in all of those locations and provide them with economic resilience. So the basic principle there for us as investors, just going back to that slide for a moment. So by putting our trees in many locations, if we do lose a plantation, the investors' trees are spread out. So we're diversifying our risk across the various locations. These are our precious trees, so we keep a close eye on them. We do regular inspections, and the farmers are also expected to do regular reports. Here you can see myself with Mariana, who's on our Costa Rica support team. And that tree we're standing next to there and feeling very excited about, that tree is actually a 1-year-old tree. And the trees really do grow that fast and that beautiful. So to complete our time together, I wanted to share with you a little about World Tree itself and have you meet our founder and CEO, Wendy Burton, who she's known this tree for 23 years. She's one of the global experts on the Empress tree. And over the last couple of decades, Wendy has been out in the world, in the news, sharing the Empress tree, and has appeared on shows like the Connie Seliker Show, on Oprah. And if you recognize this gentleman on the right, that's Morley Safer. So a little story about Morley Safer. So he phoned up Wendy and he got on the phone with her and he said to her, "Young lady, I've been hearing about your tree and I have to tell you, sounds too good to be true." And Wendy's like, "Oh." And he says, "Yeah." He said, "I am going to have my team do the due diligence and research on you. And you may know my show, 60 Minutes. And if we find out that you've been scamming people, we're going to expose you on my show." So Wendy takes a breath. He's like, "Okay." And then he says, "But if what you say is true, we're going to do a documentary on you for the American Environmental Review, which honors and acknowledges companies that are making a difference in the environment." And sure enough, after doing that research, they ended up doing a very beautiful documentary, short documentary on World Tree. And we will pop up the information on that on our WeFunder site so that you can go and see that and watch the documentary. Recently, so over the last 12 months, Wendy has met with former President Jimmy Carter. And what you may not know is that President Carter has known the Empress tree for a long time and has his own 15-acre Empress tree plantation. And this is Wendy with his assistant and friend, Jill Stuckey, and hugging a beautiful Empress tree there. And this month, our team, World Tree, is actually on the Carter plantation, harvesting his trees so that we can make some beautiful presidential lumber and some, we have some plans for some beautiful guitars to be made from the presidential lumber. So If you're intrigued, you want to know more about WorldTria, and you're particularly intrigued about the investment side, please go to our WeFunder page. You can find it on wefunder.com/WorldTree. And if you have any questions, please take the opportunity to go on that page, post your question. We always like everyone to put their questions there, and then everyone gets to share and see the answers to the questions. So please take the opportunity to do that. And also, if you're interested in booking an appointment with us, you can email us COP, or Carbon Offset Program, COP@worldtree.info. Thank you for your time and attention. If you've made it all the way through to the end of the presentation, thank you for doing that. It just is an indication of that you're somebody who Mother Nature and what we're doing on our planet and the future that we're creating on our planet is of great importance. And I hope to hear from you or to get to answer your questions on the WeFunder page in the near future. Thank you.